Hey, welcome everybody to another tutorial. Today I was doing a little bit of HTTP requests on APIs. There is a nice API out there that gives me the price of cryptocurrency live, so I decided to use that and create myself a very small, just a small app in Unity. I'm just trying out HTTP requests so I could see the price live as they update. Now, not a perfect app, but as you'll see in a moment, I do get data, so I know that Ethereum is now at 435 and Bitcoin is at 9.8 thousand. So now pulling an API is nothing new, it's nothing super magical, especially if you're doing it in web. But today we'll be showing you how to do it in Unity, inside of Unity. And you might argue that it is not the best place to do those kind of application, and I would say, yeah, you're totally right, but it's still good to know how to do it inside of Unity as well. I will be using an API called the Riot API, the one we use in League of Legends, because I have one of my friends that is trying to use that on his end, and he's also using Unity, so I'll be showing him how to do that through that video right here. So I will be showing you how to do a normal GET request and also a POST request, and we'll also go into showing how to modify your header, so you could have some custom headers in there and pass in your username or pass your API key or pass your password either through POST or custom headers. Alright guys, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so we are in Unity at the moment. We have an object under our canvas that is called request, which is just a normal button, and then a text field that is taking the whole screen. Now what I will be doing is I will go ahead and create a new C# script. I'll call it something like API, and we are going to start coding something so when we press on the request button, it is going to print out the response in the response. With our script open, we're going to lay down the basic fields we're going to need. So let's start by doing a simple request on the Google website. So something public, something that does not require anything but a single GET request. So it's going to be the same as going on your browser and typing in google.com. Alright, so we're going to start with a private const string. That's going to be the URL. And let's say we're going to go on google.ca or google.com, whatever you feel like. Now what we're going to do right here is create a public function called request, and we make it public because I'm going to link my button to it. Okay, now to create a simple request to google.com without having any post parameter, without having any different header, all we really have to do is create a new www object. I will just call request and say it's equal to a new object, and that one takes in the URL, just like this. Now just creating the request like this is going to be the very first step, so we've completed that. However, the second step is to wait and actually receive the response, because if you do something here with request, say request.text is going to be equal to, actually no, you're using request.text somewhere, maybe in a debug.log, that is not going to work simply because it didn't have the time to receive the message yet. So this is not possible because you're checking in the same exact frame for the response, which you don't have. Now there is a couple of ways to go about it. I will show you what Unity does on their reference. They have a enumerator and they do a yield return. So what happens when that object first gets enabled, they do the request, they create it, and then they wait for a result, and as long as the result is not met, they are not going to keep on going with this. They're going to run some other code, maybe in an update, and so on. So that's how they do it. They do it all in the same. I like to actually split them apart because it gives me a little bit more room to organize. So what I like to do, create a private enumerator on response, and just send in my request here. And now you have to start a coroutine with onResponse. Of course, you send in your request. And by doing this, I am now able to actually wait until this is called. Actually, this is going to be called fast enough. I forgot my yield return in here. So yield return the request. Let's actually give it a try by hooking up our text field in here. So I'll quickly do that. This is just, of course, so we can see the response in the game. We could have done a debug.log, that would have been really simple. But I'm going to do it directly in the text. I'll say response.text is going to be equal to request.text. And this way, as soon as I create this object, link my script, and then link the response text, we are going to be able to see the response from my request directly in this room. Okay. Oh, and I did forget to actually hook up my button, so let me go under request, which is my button, put the new object in here, and just hook myself to the public void request function. Alright, so we're going to boot up the game, click on requests, and you'll see it really doesn't take that long. We see Google's code. Google's code for google.com, or actually google.ca. If we were to point this somewhere else, say my own personal website, it's going to be different. So let's try this out. And here's the code running on my website right now. Now, printing your whole browser page is not really that useful. It's not really something we do. What we tend to do instead is use responses from APIs, so we can create some nice application around other application that, already run. So for the next example, we're going to use a real-world API and do a little bit of change. So instead of just doing a normal GET request like we do, like you would just enter the URL of your website in your browser, we're going to do something more. So we're going to be sending some post parameter as well, something you do when you log in, say, to Google, or when you log into Facebook. You send in post parameter as well. So you send in your username and your password, but they're not up there in the link. They're not in any get parameter, so you don't see something like this happening. What you see instead is the clean link, just like this, and then beneath what's going on is that they do send your username and password information. So we will actually go on and do that by having a look at the real API. In this case, I've chose the Riot API because I just feel like it is a very good example. I went ahead and I generated a new key that expires tomorrow, so you can't actually steal that, actually expire later tonight. I'm going to copy this over and make sure we actually put it somewhere here. So I'll change I'll create a new string, call it API key, and I'm just going to paste mine in here. And we'll learn how to pass this both as a post parameter and also as a header. So having a look at this API right here, we're going to go and grab the first one we can, maybe champion mastery, or let's go ahead and grab champion. And we're going to take the call that retrieves all the champion. Now, of course, this depends on what kind of API you're running on. Somewhere on your API page, you'll be able to find a endpoint. So I'll do an execute request right here. They're going to do a API request on themselves just to show me how it looks like. And that is the link we get. So if we go ahead and actually do the same as they did, you're going to find out that we have the information that we would need. So this could actually work if we were to go ahead, put that at the top here, and press on play, then press on request. We actually get all the information we need. So this champion ID 266 is actually active, it's not free to play, and so on. So we do get the information, but sometimes, actually all the time, the API key is going to change. So this link right here, this is what would stay static all the time if you're always querying on North America 1. So this is something really specific to Riot Games API, but assume that this one is your endpoint, and then the rest are just parameters that you can decide to change. So here we check, do we want this to be free to play? We say no. Then the only important one really is just the API key, so this one might change all the time. So let's take this, that's the static endpoint. We are going to replace all of this by the static endpoint, and we're going to say that is the champion endpoint. So we saw it's very simple. If you want to do something on this very specific API, you can use get requests. All you would have to do is replace URL by the champion endpoint, and then whatever the key was, so it was API underscore key, which is also going to remain static all the time, and then your API key, which changes. So we've seen this, it's the same exact thing that we just done, and we're not really interested in this. We'd like to be a little bit more secure and send our API key through headers, which is a little bit more complex. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This stays the same all the time, and Riot also gives us a nice little thing here, which is why I chose them. They also give you like a preview of what happens if you do a request in the header. So it stays the same. You do have the free-to-play parameter you can change, but instead of having your API key in the URL or in the post parameter, you now have it in the headers. And this is what we're about to do. And we're going to keep this request. However, we're going to need something more on top of that. We're going to need something called the www form, and we'll just call it form, instantiated to a new object. And this form will be given out at the same time as we give out the URL. So once we construct our object, you're going to see that it requests a form, so we might as well send it there. Okay. Alright, now for these header, we're going to declare a dictionary, because a header is basically just two strings. One of them is the key, and the other one is the value. We're going to say header is going to be equal to form.headers. So it's going to take the existing one that currently have their values. So it's going to take the existing one from www form, and then we can actually add some more. So we can say header at hello Mike is equal to hello, and that would be actually added in the call, and this is not single quotes, so that would actually add on to the header, so you could see it right here. Now depending on where you send your requests, maybe your custom header you just put doesn't really work, it's not accepted. In this case, we're going to use the one they gave us. It's called xRiot token, and that would be your API key. So let's go ahead and take this xRiot token. You would see it sometime on another website as the authentication or authorization header. It really doesn't matter. It depends on what their website accepts. In this case, it is the xRiot token, and the token we send is the API key. Okay. Now we are actually going to push that inside of the www request. So we're going to say champion endpoint, and then you can't actually send. Just if I move that, I can't send my form. If I just do that, it's not going to include my header. So I have to say this one is null, and then I send in my header. So there's another overload. If we have a look right here, it takes in a hash table header or a dictionary string header. This is what we're using right now. And the byte post data, we're going to see that very soon, but let's give this one a try. So we're using headers to pass in our API key. Remember, we're not actually calling this, like if you see here, the API key is not in the link, so it's hidden beneath it, and we get the same response. Now I'd like you to see what happens if we have, say, a wrong API key, so something that does not work. If you guys enjoy, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, let me know what to do next, and also join us on Discord. I will see you guys there. API key, so I'm actually doing that as myself. My League of Legends account is actually making that call on my behalf. Alright, so it's starting to get fairly cool. What I would tend to do is explain post after explaining get, but in this very tutorial I'm doing things in a different order, simply because we only have to add a little bit of code to this to add post parameters. So we said earlier that if we send a username or a password to a website, this is not directly in the link, so this is not as a get parameter. It could be as a post parameter though, and it could also be as a header. Like don't get me wrong, you can also do that as a header if you want, but in case you want to do it as a post, you would have to send it in here. If you guys remember, this parameter was called post data, and it's a byte array. So if you want to add up to it, this is what you have to do: form add field, and then you add the field. So what's the name of the thing? Could be username, and then the value of it. So Mike 180.1887, that would be the value. And after doing this, well, this is your www form, so this is basically not a byte array. So what you have to do, byte array raw form data is equal to form.data. And then you would be able to actually pass this in, just like this. Now, since we're actually sending a post parameter this time, the www object is going to detect that manually and give us a post request. So what you're going to be doing right now on your API, what you're sending is not a get request with headers, it's actually a post request with headers. In this very specific case with the Riot API, they don't take that. They don't take post parameters, so they don't want to see that, which is why they return us something like method is not allowed. So you're not allowed to use post call. So here it has to be null. This is actually taken from the documentation in Unity. I did not know that until today, so that was a fairly good thing to read about. And that's actually how we created a request, a normal request or normal get request. We did that on google.ca. Then we did a request with our custom header on the Riot Games API, and then we did another request with a post parameter, again on the same exact link. I hope this was useful to you guys. You can use this wherever you want, any API out there. OpenStreet, I remember using that to create my small Pokemon Go clone. I'm also using it right now for CryptoCompare to look at the price of cryptocurrency live. So you can do that pretty much everywhere you want. You could even try and create a browser directly in Unity. Not that it would be smart and not that it would be required, but you know, that's possible if you get response from outside this shell.